Once upon a time, in a small forgotten village nestled between winding rivers and ancient woods, there was a garden that no one spoke of, at least not out loud. The villagers called it the Garden of Forgotten Names. It was a place both mysterious and sacred, a place where the forgotten souls of the world could go to leave behind their names in exchange for a second chance at life. But not everyone believed in the garden's magic, especially not Eleanor, a disillusioned writer who had long since stopped believing in anything that couldn't be seen, touched, or measured. Her once promising career had faltered, and she had moved to the village in search of quiet, to escape the noisy chaos of a life that had failed to bring her joy. One cold autumn afternoon, Eleanor wandered aimlessly through the village, looking for something, anything, that might spark her once vibrant imagination. The houses were old and weathered, their shutters slightly ajar, as though the village itself were waiting for something to happen. It was then that she saw it. An iron gate partially obscured by thick ivy, leading to a path that seemed to vanish into the earth itself. Curious, Eleanor pushed through the gate, brushing aside the vines, and stepped into the garden. The air was thick with the scent of earth and old flowers. Though the blooms were few and far between, their colours muted and faded. The garden was arranged in winding paths, each one lined with stone benches and twisted trees. But what drew Eleanor's attention most were the names. Scattered among the hedges and carved into the bark of the trees were dozens, perhaps hundreds of names. Names written in chalk, scratched into stone, or painted on wooden plaques, all looking as though they had been left behind long ago. As she wandered deeper into the garden, she noticed a small worn notebook resting on a stone bench. Its cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age. She picked it up and opened it. The notebook was filled with names, but these names weren't just written, they were crossed out. Each name was followed by a date, and sometimes a few words, an epitaph, a note, or a confession. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages, reading the names of people who had disappeared, who had been forgotten, their stories erased by time. She paused on one name, the ink slightly faded. Seraphina Moore. The entry read, "She left the village to escape the shadows of her past, but the garden is unforgiving. She never returned." A chill ran through Eleanor as she closed the notebook and looked around. The air felt heavier now, as though something unseen was watching her. She hadn't noticed before, but there were others here. Figures that drifted just out of sight, their faces obscured by the trees or hidden in the dim light. She could hear faint whispers, voices she couldn't understand. Suddenly, a soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "You shouldn't be here." Eleanor spun around. A woman standing in the shadows of a gnarled oak tree was watching her with dark, sorrowful eyes. Her clothes were old-fashioned, as if from a time long past. The woman's face was pale, almost ethereal, and her presence seemed to draw the light toward her in strange ways. "Who are you?" Eleanor asked, her heart racing. "I am like them," the woman replied. "Forgotten." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "Forgotten? Who are you?" The woman's lips trembled slightly. "I was once someone important to someone, but I left. I had to. My name is gone, as are all the others here. This garden claims us. It takes us when we forget who we are." Eleanor felt a shiver run down her spine. But why? Why would anyone want to forget? The woman's eyes flickered with sadness. Sometimes it's not a choice. Sometimes the world is too cruel, and the only way to survive is to erase yourself, to become nothing. She looked away, her voice softening. "But the garden doesn't let you leave. It holds you here, in between." Eleanor stepped back, her mind racing. What happens to those who leave their names behind? "They're given a second chance," the woman said. "A new life, but at a price." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice grew more distant, almost lost. The garden feeds on the names. The more names it takes, the stronger it becomes. But each name leaves behind a shadow, a part of the soul that can never be returned. Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest. What do you mean? A shadow? The garden, the woman said, does not forgive. It remembers. And in the end, those who leave their names behind are forgotten, yes, but something of them remains here, something that cannot move on. Eleanor's gaze drifted to the stone bench where the notebook had been. The words in it seemed to burn in her mind, the names of those who had disappeared. And then, as though a hidden thread had been tugged in her soul, she recalled something buried deep inside her, forgot.